So the other night, I decided to watch the Comedy Central roast of Rob Lowe, and one of the main reasons I watched it was because I've been talking about all of these interrelated stories in regards to sports with Colin Kaepernick and Teddy Bridgewater, Dwayne Wade's cousin being shot, also the death of Sam Foltz, the Nebraska Cornhusker punter, and how it connects back into the civil rights, civil war type theme that the media and alike has been doing. The reason that Rob Lowe is connected is because of the movie Tommy Boy. Rob Lowe is like the bad brother of Tommy, and I've talked about how Tommy Boy is actually connected to the Nebraska Cornhuskers and also Penn State. The movie is mainly set in Sandusky, Ohio. Right after the Jerry Sandusky stuff, the first team that Penn State played was the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and it was made a huge deal. Also, in the movie Tommy Boy, in the very opening scene when he's running, he drops his American history book, and it has the number 239 written on it. Last year, we were in the 239th year of the United States. And there was a whole lot of significant things in regards to Pope Francis visiting the United States on September 23rd. That can be written 23/9, a lot like 239. And, a whole lot more. It connects back to the movie Teen Wolf even. And I'll leave some links in the description. But also in the movie Tommy Boy, when he gets to college, he writes Herbie Hancock on his American history test. And Nebraska's mascot is Herbie Husker. He also goes to college at Marquette University, which is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where Colin Kaepernick is from, where Dwayne Wade went to college. Lots of connections to Wisconsin. I even talked about how it's connected to LSU and Nebraska beating LSU in 1971 to win their first championship. Then LSU goes to Wisconsin on the first game of the season and loses. They lose the first game of their 112th season. Their coach, Les Miles, had 112 wins going into that game. Notice right here when he drops his American history book, even 1 minute, 12 seconds into the video, Nebraska's punter Sam Foltz in Gematria, his name equals 112. He died 1 month, 12 days before Nebraska's first game. And a whole lot more going on with that. Even Dwayne Wade goes to the Chicago Bulls. Chicago Bulls equals 112. He went to his first Nebraska game last year, the game that they lost to BYU. And his wife, Gabrielle Monique Union, equals 112. I just wanted to kind of touch up on that. That's why Rob Lowe is super significant. And it's interesting that all of a sudden we get a roast of Rob Lowe. And, I haven't figured out everything about this story, but I do think that it is possibly foreshadowing at least the Cubs in the World Series. It seems like it's kind of showing the Indians as well. Also, since we got the death of David Huddleston, the actor in the movie Big Lebowski, I've been talking about a Ralph theme that's going on. In that movie, he signs a check in the beginning on 9/11 of 1991, and he's at the store called Ralph's, and that's a kind of a inside joke of the whole movie, the store Ralph's. The movie also stars John Goodman, who in 1991 was in the movie called King Ralph. Anyway, in regards to that, Ralph Macchio was also one of the people roasting Rob Lowe. Ralph Macchio, he's the Karate Kid. Haven't really heard of him since, Another reason that I think that it is connected to the World Series this year is the fact that last year during Game 1 of the World Series, remember the power went out and they blamed it on the curse of Rob Lowe and Fred Savage. And, I'll get into that, but just wanted to let you know why I was watching the Comedy Central roast of Rob Lowe, why I think it's significant. So anyway, a lot of the roast, they just roasted Ann Coulter. It wasn't even really, seemed like they were there just to roast her, And that's obviously probably part of the propaganda of it all. And she was basically only there to promote Donald Trump. and also her new book promoting Donald Trump. Her name in Gematria equals 42, just like the word Freemason. Also, this roast came 83 days after Donald Trump's 70th birthday. And the word election equals 83. Notice also, too, it's 2 months, 22 days. Nebraska Cornhuskers in Gematria equals 222. Another thing that really stuck out to me about that being a very big part of what was going on with the roast, I've watched a whole bunch of these roasts. I guess there's only 15 of them. I probably watched like 10 of them. But I remember a long time ago, they had the roast of Donald Trump even. And I mean, there's only been 15 of these roasts. And this one is all about Donald Trump. Donald Trump was even roasted at one point. And I went back and looked, Donald Trump's roast to Rob Lowe's roast, a span of 2,001 days. You know, who knows? It just sticks out to me because of 9/11 and 2001, and just thought that was interesting. Trump was also roasted on the 74th day of the year. The word Masonic equals 74. It's a super special number to them. Jesus equals 74, Messiah equals 74, Gospel 74, Cross 74, Muhammad, Yeshua, Joshua, Lucifer 74. Our nation's independence on 7/4, Independence Day equals 74. Anyway, as I was looking at it, Donald Trump supposedly wasn't supposed to be roasted. It was actually supposed to be Kid Rock who got roasted, but then Kid Rock canceled, so they roasted Donald Trump. And the same thing with Charlie Sheen. When Charlie Sheen was roasted, it was supposed to be Kid Rock who got roasted. And I thought, that's kind of crazy. There must be something significant about Kid Rock. When you look up Kid Rock, he fits everything that I've been talking about in my recent videos in regards to the Huskers and all of these interrelated stories. He was born on January 17th of 1971. That's the same day that the Colts defeated the Cowboys in the Super Bowl. Also 17 days earlier was when Nebraska won their first championship, beating LSU. Both of them games were in the Orange Bowl. If you write out Orange Bowl, it equals 112. Just like LSU's, they're in their 112th season. Sam Foltz equals 112. Everything I just said before. Nebraska this year is in their 117th season, being called the Cornhuskers. January 17th, a lot like 117. Dwayne Wade, born on January 17th. Colin Kaepernick was compared to Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, born on this day. He died of Parkinson's disease, that equals 117. The day of this roast, September 5th, was also the day that leaves 117 days in the year. Last year on 9/5, Dwayne Wade went to his first ever Nebraska game. So in Gematria, if you write out Kid Rock equals 71 and 35 the small way. The word Catholic equals 71 and 35. The word Nebraska equals 71, 35. I talked about how Nebraska is super connected to Moses. They play in the Sea of Red. Moses equals 71. The word punt equals 71. Sam Foltz, the punter. All of the race stuff going on. African Americans equals 71. Last year, Nebraska got a bowl game somehow, and they played in Levi's Stadium in San Francisco, where Colin Kaepernick plays. Moses was in the tribe of Levi. So, super significant. What I didn't look more, I need to look more into Kid Rock and see if there's something super significant about him and how he connects a little bit more. One thing I didn't write in here was that, when you think of him, you think of Eminem and ICP in Detroit. And Detroit in Gematria equals 91, just like Chicago Cubs. And, the Cubs are cursed they got cursed in the 1945 World Series when they were playing Detroit. And the Indians also cursed because of the trade that involved a Detroit player. Anyway, if you write out Kid Rock's real name, Robert Ritchie, it equals 150, just like Lincoln, Nebraska, the big way. So, I mean, he's super fitting to what's going on. He even married Pamela Anderson. Pamela Anderson, born on 7/1. Go figure. If you write her name out in Gematria, 138, just like Donald Trump. And like I said, this is the part where I'm really not sure. I didn't look as much as I should have. I guarantee there's something more going on, and there's a reason. Kid Rock was the one who didn't do these, and it leads back to Donald Trump. But also, Pamela Anderson is another one of the 15 people who've been on the Comedy Central roast. So Donald Trump, Pamela Anderson, Rob Lowe, Kid Rock's supposed to do it, and he doesn't. I mean, and only 15 people in the world? It seems kind of fishy that 3 of them would be connected into the story at least. And I read somewhere that Pamela Anderson even married Tommy Lee after knowing him for 96 hours. The word Freemason equals 96. Just pointing that out. I'm sure there's a whole lot more to Pamela Anderson. But what reminded me of Pamela Anderson, Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee have their sex tape. And another one of the big things in regards to Rob Lowe in this Comedy Central roast was the fact that he has a sex tape as well with a 16-year-old girl. He actually made his sex tape the night before the Democratic National Convention in 1988, I believe. So I need to look more into that as well, but just wanted to put it out there. Anyway, let's look at some of this stuff and the reason why I think it's connected to the 112th World Series. So last year, the curse, I guess, was on the Mets because the Mets lost. The curse of Rob Lowe and Fred Savage when the power went out. There was also a second blackout in that game. It was in the 5th inning, right after the 55th pitch, when number 55 hit the ball. If you write out Savage in Gematria, it equals 55. If you write out Lowe in Gematria, it equals 55. And then even 5 pitches later, there was a home run. And the game, it was game 1 of the World Series last year, that just so happened to be on Philadelphia's 333rd anniversary, which just stuck out a lot because all of it goes back to Ann Coulter and this Rob Lowe roast. Ann Coulter was born on December 12th, which is December 8th, 12/8, which is a number very significant to Pennsylvania. William Penn, the founder of Philadelphia, also Pennsylvania, and Gematria equals 128. Ben Franklin died on a date numerology of 108. Pennsylvania became 128. Pennsylvania became a state on 128 numerology. If you write out Tommy Boy, it equals 128. Tommy Boy connecting back to Penn State. If you write out Democratic National Convention, it equals 128. And it was in Philadelphia this year. And then think about Rob Lowe making his sex tape the night before the Democratic National Convention. He was there campaigning for Michael Dukakis. Michael Dukakis equals 55, just like Lowe, just like Savage. One thing I forgot to point out, Tommy Boy in the movie, his name is Tommy Callahan. If you write out Tommy Callahan, it equals 138, just like Donald Trump, just like Pamela Anderson. Anyway, the reason that Rob Lowe and Fred Savage were supposedly the curse of the World Series last year is because they were advertising one of their shows, their new show called The Grinder, when the power went out. The first time the TV blackout or whatever happened. The show was canceled on May 16th, which was another part of the jokes. A lot of the jokes in regards to Rob Lowe on the roast were about all of his shows being canceled. This show was canceled on 16/5. The word Scottish, or the phrase Scottish Rite equals 165. If you go from the day that this show was canceled to the World Series this year, a span of 162 days, the phrase Major League Baseball equals 162. They play 162 regular season games. It was also 5 months, 9 days, and just think about this roast being on September 5th, which can even be written, 59. If you go from the day that that show was canceled to the day of the roast, a span of 112 days, and we're going into the 112th World Series. So I got a good feeling that show was canceled on this date for a reason, to foreshadow the 112th World Series and also foreshadowing baseball. Another thing that was interesting about the day this roast was on was that it's 50 days before the World Series. It was also a date numerology of 50. 9 plus 5 plus 20 plus 16 equals 50. 50 days before the World Series begins. I looked at the baseball scores of the day on 9/5, and the only game that had anything remotely close to it was the Mets versus the Reds. The Mets won 5-0, and the Mets were the team cursed by Rob Lowe and Fred Savage. This was also the Mets' 138th game this season. Just think about that in regards to Donald Trump. And last year, the Mets were the team that was super connected to Queen Elizabeth II, even though the Royals, obviously the royal family, the Mets had a lot of connections though. In Gematria, New York Mets equals 168. Queen Elizabeth II equals 168. The Mets play in Queens. New York equals 111. Queen Elizabeth was born on the 111th day of the year. This year it was the 112th day because of a leap year, which also makes me wonder when you go back and think about the World Series last year. The final game began on 11/1 in the 111th World Series, but the game ended after midnight, so it didn't actually end until 11/2. And I've seen a lot of stuff this year where 111 and 112 seem to be interrelated, so I wonder if that's why they did that last year during the World Series. Also, we had the death of Prince this year, who's been connected to a whole lot of stuff, and he died on Queen Elizabeth's 90th birthday on the 112th day of the year. If you write out Rob Lowe equals 90. If you write out Rob Lowe's full name, Robert Hepler Lowe, it equals 197, like the word Prince in Jewish Gematria. If you go from the day that Prince died and Queen Elizabeth turned 90 to the roast of Rob Lowe, a span of 137 days, remember, the Grinder was canceled on the 137th day of the year this year. 137 is the 33rd prime number. 33, the highest degree, Scottish Rite Freemasonry. The Mets won on 9/5, and the pitcher was Bartolo Colon, and it gave him a 13-7 record. And, the Royals beat the Mets in the World Series last year. On the same day of this roast, the Royals won their won on their 137th game of the season. And, September 5th, 9/5, 5/9, Kansas City Royals in Gematria equals 59. Cologne equals 59. He was even the losing pitcher last year in Game 1 of the World Series, the one that had the TV blackout with the curse of Rob Lowe and Fred Savage. If you write out the curse of Rob Lowe and Fred Savage, it equals 122. If you write out Kansas City, it equals 122. I also mentioned a whole lot of stuff in regards to Kansas City and how they were connected to Pope Francis. Pope Francis equals 59 and 122 in Gematria. A guy dressed as the Pope caught a home run ball of Salvador Perez on 6/6 last year of 15. 1 plus 5, 6. 6, 6, 6. Anyway, in that game, Cologne threw 50 pitches. So just think about that in regards to September 5th, the roast of Rob Lowe, on a date numerology of 50, 50 days before the 112th World Series this year. And then the Mets beat the Cincinnati Reds 5-0. And if you go back 112 days before the 112th World Series, the Chicago Cubs played the Cincinnati Reds, and they lost 5-9 or 9-5, a lot like the same day that the Mets beat Cincinnati. I also find it interesting that on 112 days before the 112th World Series, the Mets lost to Miami. And think about that in regards to Back to the Future of last year. The Cubs were supposed to sweep Miami. It's just kind of interesting. Miami equals 45 in Gematria. Cubs equals 45 in Gematria. Wrigley equals 45. Illinois equals 45. The curse of the Billy Goat was from the year 45. Also, Miami was supposed to win the World Series, or Miami is supposed to get swept by the Cubs last year in the World Series according to Back to the Future. If you write out Back to the Future, it equals 59. And who won? The Kansas City Royals that equal 59. Pretty interesting. And, I don't mean to do this, but it always seems very interesting. A lot of this story actually seems to connect back to my life. My full name in Gematria equals 95, and 176. Back to the Future equals 176 the big way as well. And 95 also reminds me of when the Cleveland Indians were in the World Series for the first time since 1954 in 1995. And, earlier I pointed out that the Cubs are cursed by when they were playing Detroit, and the Indians are cursed because of a trade that involved Detroit. And the Indians, on 112 days before the 112th World Series, if I can find it here, the Indians actually beat Detroit 1-12, a lot like 112. So, just makes me wonder. I really think the roast was super significant and it happened on that day for a certain reason. The Grinder also came out 11 months, 7 days before 9/5. Just interesting with all the 117 stuff as well. Rob Lowe in Jewish Gematria equals 1107. If you take out the 0, it's even 117. I talked about how the Pope Francis's visit was super significant last year. Last year when the power went out, it went out at 9:19 and came back on at 9:23. Pope Francis began his trip in the United States on 9/19 by going to Cuba, and then, of course, he went to the White House at 9:23 on 9/23. He arrived in America on his 923rd day as Pope in the 239th year of the United States. And once again, thinking back to the Future, think about the Miami connection and think about Miami and how it has a huge connection to Cuba. A lot of Cubans, swim to Miami. I even have a friend whose dad actually swam from Cuba to Miami. Or at least that's what he says, Maybe he was on some type of inner tube or whatever. Also, in regards to all the 55 stuff, Low 55, Savage 55, the second blackout in the first game, with all the 55 stuff, Obama is 55 years old this year. Obama also went to Cuba. He went 26 weeks, 2 days after Pope Francis went on the 262nd day of the year. A whole lot more to that story. 9/19 reminds me a lot of 91 and 19, or just 91, 91, the palindrome. And Chicago Cubs equals 91. If you write out September 19th, it equals 91, just like Chicago Cubs. So, I don't know. I feel like that curse was just showing us for this year of the Cubs being in the World Series. A few other interesting things going on with the story. If you go from Donald Trump's birthday to the World Series, a span of 4 months, 11 days, the word assassin equals 411. JFK died on 411 Elm Street. The World Series also begins on the day that leaves 67 days in the year. Blood sacrifice equals 67. Remember, Prince died 67 days after Vanity. Prince was even born on June 7th, 6/7. A lot of the stuff I was talking about in regards to Nebraska and Dwayne Wade and Colin Kaepernick all goes back to the date of 7/6, the day we got the Philando Castile, the Alton Sterling stuff in the news. Alton Sterling equals 67, Philando Castile equals 67, Blue Lives Matter equals 67 and 76. It was even established in Louisiana on a date numerology of 67. Dwayne Wade signed with the Chicago Bulls on 7/6. Nebraska's coach born on 7/6. In regards to Herbie Husker and Tommy Boy, Herbie Hancock is 76 years old right now. Rob Lowe was born on the 76th day of the year. Fred Savage was born in the year 76. Peyton Manning was also one of the guys roasting Rob Lowe. Peyton Manning born in 76. If you go from the Super Bowl to the day of the roast, a span of 211 days. You know, I've talked about this before with the death of Sam Foltz as well. He died 211 days after his final game in the Foster Farms Bowl. He was born on January 21st. It can be written as 21/1. If you write out Comedy Central Roast, it equals 211, also 76. If you write out Minnesota, Louisiana together, it equals 211 and 76. And think about that in regards to Philando Castile, Alton Sterling, Prince. Peyton Manning even had a joke that involved a number. It was the number of characters on the Twitter account, and he was referring to 140, which is just interesting. I'm not sure what that number means, but I've been seeing it a lot in regards to all of the race stuff in Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge's governor, John Bell Edwards, equals 140. They had an article about the flooding there that said get out now, that equals 140. A few other 140s. Just wanted to point out that Peyton Manning made a joke about that. Peyton Manning even from Louisiana. So also we had Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid, coming out of nowhere to be on this roast, which just seems odd, you know. Maybe not, but it seems odd that they're doing a roast of Rob Lowe as well. I mean, who's Rob Lowe? At least when you think about it in 2016. Who is Ralph Macchio? Who is Rob Lowe? I remember even one of the jokes, they joked about Ralph Macchio looking so young, and he's 54 years old. So he'll be 55 years old 1 month, 30 days after this roast, and then if you go from 7/6 to the day of the roast, it's also a span of 1 month, 30 days. So I found that kind of interesting. He's also named Ralph. A lot of stuff I've been talking about. Ralph equals 55. He's going to be 55 soon. He's in the movie The Outsiders with Rob Lowe. The Outsiders equals 55. And I mean, check this out. He's really famous for the Karate Kid that was made in the mold of the success story of the film Rocky that came out in the year 76. Sylvester Stallone, his full name in Gematria equals 117. He was born on 7/6. The character Rocky in the movie, born on 7/6. Rocky even born in 1945, which was the year that the Cubs were cursed by the Billy Goat. Also the year that World War II came to an end. So Rocky was born 92 days before the curse of the Billy Goat. World War II came to an end on 9/2 in 1945, that same year as well. So interesting. And, you know, I just made a video in regards to my birthday being on the same day as Teddy Bridgewater and Les Miles. And they gave me a weird copyright strike on an old video about the truth about Charlie that came out on January 30th. Which just makes me wonder with Ralph Macchio, 1 month, 30 days, 1 month, 30 days. Talked about how my mom's maiden name equals 130. She was born on January 30th. And just think about it in regards to Karate Kid. You know, possibly nothing, but my name is Daniel and I'm her son, Daniel's son. Just found it kind of interesting. Also in regards to, like, it was 60 days and 61 days, 121. My name equals 121. If you go from January 30th to the day of the roast, a span of 219 days, also 7 months, 6 days. My last name equals 76. Baton Rouge, Louisiana equals 219. I talked about all kinds of stuff in regards to 219 recently again. Another super interesting thing is that the roast happened on 9/5. My name equals 95. The small way here, Dan Barrett equals 50 and 95. My full name equals 95. 50, interesting because it had a date numerology of 50, 50 days before the World Series. Mr. Miyagi even has the same gematria as me. It's just really weird. He is played by a real guy with the last name of Narita that has a gematria of 76, just like my last name. He died 2 months, 19 days after 9/5 even in real life. If you write out 7/6, it equals 117. 9/5, the day that leaves 117 days in the year. if you go from January 30th to Ralph Macchio's 55th birthday, 9 months, 5. So, the only reason I even bring this stuff up is because, I truly think that there's something bigger going on than just men sitting around for 100 years and writing up a huge script. I think there is some type of universal code that they know how to manipulate. Maybe they are the ones who created the universal code. There's a lot more going on than what I truly understand, but it's bigger, I think, than just men sitting around doing it. There's got to be some type of ancient technology, or, depending on your beliefs, some type of God, something else going on with this. I just think that there's something more to it. And if I knew what it was and I had a concrete opinion, I would give it. But I don't have a concrete opinion. But just know that I know that there are people who are a part of it, but it makes me wonder how they can do so much. I just think there's something bigger. So, moral of the story, I think this roast of Rob Lowe is trying to tell us about the Cubs being in the World Series, possibly even a little clue to the Indians being in the World Series, a whole bunch of other stuff. I need to look more into Kid Rock and Pamela Anderson. There's definitely a connection to Donald Trump. It connects back to all of these stuff that I've been recently talking about. So, we'll see. Just putting the information out. Have a good one.